Anger seems to be one of the most uncomfortable feelings that most of us face once we get sober and take away the option to numb. Listen as we dig into learning to process anger so that we can cope with it instead of letting it get the best of us. We talk about how we came to see anger as an important emotion, how we use it as protection from pain, and how we let down the walls so that we can move through it.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery Podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Steve and Julie. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full, there's no space left for alcohol.
If you haven't already, make sure you rate and review Through the Glass Recovery Podcast on your favorite listening platform. Those ratings go a long way in getting this podcast into the hands of the people who need it the most. So welcome, everybody. This is episode 40, and we are so excited to be here today. We are going to have all of these wonderful guys introduce themselves. I'm kind of excited I get to hang out with the guys tonight. That doesn't happen very often, so really cool to see you guys. Let's start with Ryan. How are you tonight?
I am good. My name is Ryan. I'm 35 years old. We live in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I used to work in the music industry, but since getting sober, I've become a stay-at-home dad. Big change of scenery there. But I have a little over 4 years sober, and yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you for being here, and it's so nice to meet you. We had Ryan's lovely wife on a few months ago on episode 28, and so it's nice to meet the other half of this wonderful little family.
Mm-hmm.
And next, we will move on to Daniel.
Hey, everyone. My name is Daniel Hearn. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, up in Canada. I've been in recovery for 6 years now. About 2 years ago, I started a live streaming video podcast called Hard Knox Talks, and since then, I have come to do this full time, and I'm really grateful for the work that I get to do, helping people share their stories of lived experience, bring a little hope to our community, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I love the content that you produce, and I will make sure that I put your links and everybody's links in the show notes so that our listeners can get in touch and make sure they follow you. And then just to keep it confusing, we're going to go with the other Dan.
I'm Dan. I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I've been sober for 3 years, and I am currently a student, and I'll be finished with school soon.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, it's nice to have you here. And Dan has been here. I think this is his 5th episode. So thank you, as always, for coming back and sharing more of your story with us. We appreciate you.
Always happy to be here.
One of the emotions that comes up often in conversation is anger. Most of us never learned to regulate our emotions in our youth. So emotions come on big and strong, and anger is one that can lead us to doing things that we regret and can even lead us back to wanting to have a drink. So we are going to talk about anger today. What role has it played in your recovery? Is it something you've struggled with? We'd love to hear about your experiences and some of the things that you've learned about coping with anger in healthy ways.
When I think of anger, the first thing I really come up with is somebody told me a little while back that anger is not an emotion. Anger is a response to an emotion. Yeah. And I didn't really appreciate that at first. When I was drinking, I was angry at everybody pretty much all the time. And I went into any situation I went into looking to pick a fight with that person. And it was just easier than trying to connect with them. What that really came down to for me was a fear of being rejected. And if I went in and I was a giant jerk and I made it unpalatable to want to be around me, I didn't have to wait for them to reject me first. And, therefore I protected myself, and I was like, no, see, look, I told you I didn't want those people in my life. I didn't need them in my life anyway. That's all fine. So, see, I got exactly what I wanted. and it took, spending maybe 18 months of sobriety before I really appreciated how much that connection really did mean to me, and how that was kind of the root of all evil all along. And that, finding meetings and finding people who understood me, that was the salve that really helped to start to heal that wound.
I think I can relate to that. I joke. It's only partially a joke though. Anger or resentment got me sober. Like I got sober on a resentment. Things got so bad for me, and as I've moved forward in my recovery, I've realized that that's not the case. But at the time, looking back, I was fueled on it. I was going to get sober before she did. I was going to do this before she did. I was going to do that before she did. And I was just on fire. I was on fire with resentment because some really terrible things happened in my active addiction. And I'm sure that, terrible things happen for most people who find the certain situations that I was in. But it took a long time, a number of years actually, until I started to understand that you're right. It was a response to an emotion, and that emotion was hurt, was pain, because it was easier to hate her. Her is Donna. Donna is the mother of my children, and we're together again, and it's crazy. But it was easier to hate her at the time. It was less painful to feel hate than it was to accept what had happened, and that in fact I still loved her.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I think anger became bigger for me actually in sobriety, and like in the process of getting into recovery. I was in and out of recovery for many years before I finally got sober. And when I would get a little time, I'd be blaming everybody else and just be super angry at everybody else. But the farther I got in, then my anger was so focused towards myself and, look what I had done to my life. And it took a long time for me to get over that and stop playing the what if game and being extremely angry with myself. But time made it easier with therapy and all of the different stuff that comes with recovery.
And for me, therapy was such an important part of that recipe too. Meetings were important, and coming and talking with people like-minded who shared those experiences, all of that mattered. But going to, a professional therapist who could kind of parse that out and, explain these emotions to me in a way that I never got to understand them before, it brought so much clarity. When he said, half the stuff he said to me since I, started being honest with it, has really just changed the way I look at myself.
When I was in active addiction, I was an angry person. I was angry it was everyone's fault. I would point the finger and blame other people and do all of that. When I quit, I really I'm not an angry person. I think Julie can attest to this. I'm just not an angry person. There's very few times I have actually been angry. The one time I was angry, I blared all the screaming rock I could find, and I recorded myself screaming that rock music. I was just screaming Disturbed in my truck for half an hour, 45 minutes, Drowning Pool, just going to town. And that was the first time I really felt like anger. I was angry at someone else, and I was angry for the way I was being treated, and I was angry for feeling the way that I did, and because of the way I was allowing myself to be treated, and I couldn't get past it, and so I just had to scream. I had to get that out in some sort of healthy way, and my healthy way was instead of, I don't punch walls, I don't get physically angry, I'm just not that kind of person. I never really have been. Violence has never been a way to express myself. But I just found angry music, and that was my way to like cope with it. I did it by myself, and it was a way that I could like listen to myself afterwards, so I could kind of figure out where I was coming from. So
But you listened to yourself afterwards?
Yeah, I did.
Hmm.
I actually shared it with some friends too.
I
They're like,
tried
this is
this.
awesome.
So after he did that, Steve actually has me recorded like raging to Slipknot now too.
Did it work the same for you?
There is something like really cathartic about that. There is. I didn't listen to myself though. I just rage screamed into my microphone, and then I sent it to Steve, and I did not send it to anybody else. But no, I think for me, if we're talking about things that we do to cope, for me, it's venting a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the bottle it up kind of girl forever, literally forever. Like my parents trained me well, you keep that shit inside at all times. And I didn't unlearn that until, I don't know, I got sober. So I would keep it inside and keep it inside and keep it inside. And maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, I would absolutely lose my shit, like psychopath, screaming, throwing, breaking things. And my kids could even feel it coming on. It did not happen toward them. It generally was just me. Like I would destroy shit because I got so angry. And I mean, it got to the point where at some point I'm like, maybe I have BPD because I snap. Absolutely, just a switch flips, I'd snap, I would lose it. Since I got sober, that level of rage has never happened again. I've gotten angry a few times, pretty angry, like rage screaming Slipknot angry. But the difference now is that I've learned how to talk about how I'm feeling all the time. So I mean, I talk to Steve and other people throughout the day and keep that conversation going. So when I am starting to get upset or sad or hurt or afraid or any of those things that are kind of behind that anger, those things are coming out constantly, and it just never has the opportunity to build up. And that has been probably the one most powerful thing about anger for me, because in general, I was always that perfect, happy mom that looked wonderful. And then a switch would flip and I would go into absolute rage. Like it's kind of awful to talk about, honestly, because the woman that I was when I hit that point is somebody I never, ever want to see again. I never want my children to see her. I never want to feel that way again. And for me, it's talking about the way that I feel. It turns out that's a really important part of being a human that I just missed out on all those years.
I think it's that bottling it all up, right? Like it's that frustration part, and the frustration, add frustration, and then the putting on the fake smile, and all it does is invalidate yourself more and then build that up. And I can feel that when it's happening, but I don't know if I've just been letting it go enough so it doesn't get that far. I'm just not really very much, at least an outwardly angry person, and I don't really hold on to it. I'm just like one of those kind of perpetually positive people for the most part.
You let stuff go. You're really good at letting stuff go. A lot better than I am.
I kind of like when I imagine you screaming and then listening back to it, I can relate to that in a way, like, because I sing too. I have a guitar and I do all that. But like when I was early in my recovery, like I would write, man, I would sit down and just like rage for 7 pages straight. But I would never go back and read it because like, oh my God, that guy's crazy. I don't want to read that. So like, what was that like? Like, what was it like when you listened to it again? Like, did that bring you any kind of healing, or was it just like, yeah, no, that's crazy? Because sometimes like I can say something, like something spinning in my head, but it doesn't sound crazy until I say it out loud. And then I hear myself saying these crazy things and I realize that's crazy. I can't believe that was even bothering me.
It's kind of like what Julie said. It was cathartic. It was also like, I got to hear the parts of me that I really didn't want to hear because I could feel my anger in my voice. And if it's not a place where it was never a place that I've ever visited before. That was a new experience for me. And then re-listening to it was one of those things where I get a chance to go back. And although like I was exhausted after that, because I never let that side of me get fed. Does that make sense? I never really fed. I fed it that night. I really did. And I learned that there is no benefit to me going that far. Like there was nothing. It was healthy. It was a healthy way for me to let it go. But I think that was a whole bunch of the bottled up of my past that finally came straight forward, and I had no choice but to like just feel it. And I still have them. I still have that. I can go back and listen to it. I like to keep my stuff because it's a reminder of where I used to be, and I still have all of those journal entries and stuff like that. Like it is to me, if I want to experience that again, because I'm in a place where that lesson might be helpful, at least I can go back and learn that lesson again.
Yeah. I like to read through old journal entries too, because it takes me back to a place I was, whether it was last week, last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the progress that we make along the way. At least it is for me. And going back to look at that, solidifies to me exactly where I am today compared to where I was back then, and it shows where that progress is. And if I go back far enough, I'm sitting there looking at a guy who was completely compartmentalized. Nobody saw everything. I let people see what I wanted them to see, and that was it. And it came out of the same thing. It was all bottled up, and I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want anyone to see me as weak. I surely didn't want anyone to see me cry or something. That would have been the end of the world. And I think early on in a meeting, I heard somebody say, if I can talk about it, I take away its power over me. And I've held on to that statement. I carry it right around with me now, and it absolutely is the first thing. If I am really down on something or whatever is going on, that's the way out. That's the way to let it go. Because I'm a person who holds a grudge on somebody. I'm the person who has a hard time letting stuff go. But if I can go out and I can sit and talk to somebody about it, all that weight comes right back off my shoulders. I don't have to hold on to it anymore. It's not mine anymore.
Venting's been really big for me. My poor parents, and they're happy I'm sober, so they gladly indulge. But that, and finding like my core group of my inner circle that I can talk to, and bouncing stuff off of them, and just kind of like Daniel said, like after saying it out loud, is this reasonable? Am I being rational, or am I letting another emotion get the best of me?
Just saying it like that, that's huge, because sometimes something seems completely unmanageable and will provoke all kinds of anger in our own head because we're seeing it through our own lens and whatever is going on in our life at that time. But as soon as we give it to somebody else, they can kind of flip, they can see it through their own lens and kind of flip that around and be like, here's what I'm seeing. And you're like, oh, shit, I think I was overreacting.
And then you feel worse.
Well, at least, I don't know. I mean, it'll calm me down at least, and make me realize that I'm maybe being a little bit crazy.
That awareness is the important thing, though, because if I overreact and I may take out that frustration on somebody who didn't deserve it, I realize now that that's my fault, that's my part in this, and I can go and say I shouldn't have talked to you like that. This is what's been going on with me, and sadly, you took the brunt of my ire, and that never should have happened. Whereas before, it would have been their fault for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's me and my wife. I'm so grateful every day that we're both in recovery, so we understand one another and everything. But we could not be polar opposites, I don't think, though. We're very opposite in just the way we are and operate. So it's great to have her there to always be like, really? Like, check
Yeah.
yourself.
When I was in early recovery, like I was talking about earlier, I don't know what I would have done if I did not have those rooms to go to. You know, if I didn't have those meetings to go to. There was some times I look back now, like I went in there spitting fire like a crazy man. Like legit. Like I was like talking about murder, talking about like I'm gonna kill. Like I was crazy. And nobody ever told me to shut up. Nobody ever, you know, like once or twice people were like, you know, I don't know if that's helpful. but they never said stop. You know, I got it out and I kept getting it out. Like for the first like 2 years, like I don't know how they put up with me, to be quite frank and honest. But man, I'm glad they did, because they gave me a community where I could go and practice trying to be a human being, you know, practice trying to be someone who's trying to get better, you know, and that was, yeah, I get it. The venting thing, I mean, it's still important. It's just, I vent a little different about different things.
Well, you say you don't know. You say you don't know why they put up with you, but the reason they put up with you,
I
is
know
because
why.
they've
I don't know
been there.
how. I don't know how.
Like we've all been there though, right?
Yeah.
We've all been that person that's
Yeah.
raging the crazy shit. Like you're gonna show up and everybody else is gonna be like, "Ooh, yeah, I have felt that before."
Yeah.
That's how they
Yes.
do it, because they
Like,
And
understand.
hearing someone say that is a reminder that I'm never alone.
yeah.
That I have a community in this journey.
My anger
Yeah.
was always wanting someone to get hurt, not by my own hand, because I didn't want to be responsible for it. It's true.
Why am I the only one laughing? What do other people are doing?
It's true. I wanted people to like disappear out of my life,
Yeah.
and I, you know, car accident or something along those lines, like they let them hurt themselves or have somebody else do it, so my life would be better without them. Like that's where like my anger was like a wish. It never got as far as to like build it up to actually like I want to take care of this shit myself, but I can see how it would get there. I just never got that far of like holding on to it. Like Julie said, like I guess I let it go. There's nothing fucking, it's either the fire of passion. Like you were saying, Dan, you used it as a fire and motivation to give you purpose.
It was a protective factor as well. It was protecting me from even deeper hurt. Although I didn't.
No, you don't until like you finally, after 2 years, get a chance to like scream it all out and in all of its vulgarity, and then once it, that's the beauty of the rooms, right? You get to vent it all out, and finally when you've lost all of the words to say all the hateful things and you're all done with it, you can turn around and go, wow, did I ever friggin' hate for a long time? Wow.
And hopefully someone comes in angrier than you, so you can be like, well, at least that wasn't that bad. Now that guy's crazy.
No, I think too, it's like anger is a secondary emotion, right? Anger is just covering something else up. And for a lot of us, it's either fear or hurt. There's other things for sure. But when you start feeling angry, I mean, the first thing you really need to do is figure out, is it hurt? Is it fear? Is it what's going on under there? That's the stuff nobody wants to talk about. So like anger is your wall, right? But once you get rid of the wall and you figure out what's behind it, that's when you start actually coping with your stuff and figuring that out. Like for me, so when I got angry with my kids, I was trying to control them into being who I thought they were supposed to be, because I wanted what was best for them. And then there was a certain amount of also, I want to look like a good mom, right? So if my kids were acting like little spazzes at the grocery store, I would feel like I look like the bad mom here because my kids are running around like little psychopaths. And, you know, so then I would get angry so I was trying to control all this other stuff. I was trying to control what people thought of me. I was trying to control my children who were just being children, trying to control all of this stuff. Then the anger would build up inside of me. All of that was just fear. whether I'm trying to control my kids' behavior when they're 5 or whether I'm trying to control it when they're 15, it's out of fear because I want what's best for them and I worry about them, or because I want to feel like I'm a good mom and I want other people to think that I look like a good mom. And so, I mean, getting past the wall of the anger and then figuring out what's actually under there, then you can start doing something about it. Like, so I've been reading Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. I might have talked about it on here already. I'm not sure. I railed against reading that book forever because I was like, I am not codependent, damn it. But turns out I am. So I want to control people into doing the things I think are best for them. Once I realized all of that stuff underneath the anger, then I could stop trying to control everything. And then the healing starts happening. And then, the anger doesn't happen quite so much because I'm letting the other stuff go. And there's just there's so much digging you can do into all these different emotions and start learning healthy ways to see the world, learning healthy ways to see yourself, learning healthy ways to interact with other people. Like there's so much growth that's there if you let down the anger wall and then figure out what's on the other side of it. And it's not going to be pretty and it doesn't feel good to look at almost every time. Like it's, that makes you squirm and it makes you cringe and whatever. But that's where like the healing and the growth happens, I think.
I think at least for me, I know I would always feel bad about how I was feeling and feel bad about how I reacted and feel bad about all. And, the opposite way I try to look at that now is I'm not going to feel bad for being angry about something because, it probably does come from a place of fear. That's usually how that works for me. So it's, the fact is what I'm feeling at any given moment is exactly the right thing. That's exactly what I should be feeling. And I'm exactly in the right place at the right time. The question is not what, the question is why. And to look down and say, why am I getting this worked up over that? Because this doesn't have to be something that ruins my day.
Yeah, every time I take a step back and look, it's usually fear-based when I'm angry, almost always.
Me too.
I'm working on some new designs right now for some merch. So there's going to be new merch. That's exciting. So, but it's such a fearful process, because you're working with a graphic designer and if you're like me and you have something in your life that you're very passionate about, a little bit of ego gets involved there because you want everything to be perfect. You want to put your best foot forward and project all the professionalism and have all of the correct symbolism and messaging. And this is really challenging for me. And I remember when I was first doing some brand work to get the brand done, I had to turn it over to someone else because I was going crazy. Like a brand is very important. If you talk to any big corporation, you'll understand branding is very important. And that makes me want to take it to a place of perfection, but that just gets so filled with fear that eventually I had to turn it over. And I sort of forgot about that when I started down this new merch adventure. And it's definitely, the fear of failure. What if nobody likes it? What if it, what if I lose a bunch of money, or what if, there's a million what ifs. So I can understand that.
That brings up to me getting a tattoo. Right, you have a tattoo artist, and they show you the picture, and then you're scared to tell them that you don't like it, even though it's a permanent piece of art that's gonna go on your body, and you want to make sure that it's right. And I remember my first tattoo experience where I was like, I have no idea how I'm gonna respond to this because you're a people pleaser and all the rest. Like it's hard to say no, I don't like that, and especially when you're getting a big piece, because I was getting a big piece. My first one was my whole back, right? I've got a giant phoenix on my back, and you want it to be perfect, just like you're saying, because that's it's stuck on your body forever, right? And once it's there, but you don't want to be insulting, and you don't want to do, they're putting the tattoo on my back. What if I make them angry? Am I going to have to find another tattoo artist? I want this now. I want this yesterday.
Yeah. Don't want to hurt their feelings. That's funny. I'm going through that same thing with my graphic designer. Cause is it okay? He's like, is there any more edits? And I'm like, no, it's good. And then I'll look at it for a few hours and then it'll be like, and I keep doing that. And eventually he's going to start charging me more money. But like, I'm starting to think he's going to start taking it personal, as though this isn't his full-time job and he does this all the time. Yeah.
Oh, I used to do the same thing. I have quite a few tattoos, and I'm a huge people pleaser. So saying no, I'm like, I just like never did it. I've had 2 cover-ups because of it, but luckily now I'm able to, express what I need.
And I think that's probably where a lot of the anger or frustration, the build up to it is just not having boundaries, right? Like just allowing myself to get walked on, and like you said, you just, instead of saying no, like I don't really like this isn't really matching, using the tattoo for an example, this doesn't line up with the way I want to see this. And what happens is it leads to more frustration. It leads to, I don't want to see this thing anymore because that's not really what I wanted, and it's just a reminder of how I abandoned myself. And then that's just frustrating all on its own, because I think, and I think that's where that anger and rage came from too, from me that one time, is there was, the more I realize where I came from was just no boundaries. Like just take everything you want, and then left like no empty cup, self-worth gone, all of these things are gone. And then it's like, what do I have left? The only thing I have left, at least when I was in active addiction, was anger. Like that was all that was left, because kindness was so hard to find.
Yeah, I had no idea what boundaries were prior to getting sober and doing some of that work. And and really it was kind of figuring all that out for myself too, and in living within the bounds of my own moral compass, or within my own value system, and not letting people near me that aren't going to respect that.
I think anger too is a really good indicator of what your boundaries need to be.
Boy.
Because I don't always know what boundaries I need to be setting with people. Every relationship is different, and I'm always at a different point in my life anyway. But if I get angry, generally that means there was some boundary there that got crossed. I just have to figure out what it was, and then I have to figure out how I'm going to communicate that.
Yeah, that reminds me of another story. So Sundays is show days in this family. Like, like we're both Donna and I are a part of it. So Sundays are kind of like high strung for me, because like we've got a lot of things to prepare for and whatever. But I need to have some quiet time on Sunday afternoon just to prepare, right? And typically every day, like because I wake up so early, I get to have a nap in the afternoon every day, it would seem, except for Sunday. Every single Sunday, a family member would come over, or the kids would be extra loud, or whatever. It took me over a year to decide that my anger was valid. Because like every Sunday I would get angry and I would be like, am I being an asshole? Like if I get mad and I say I need this, like, is that okay? And it took a year for me to finally be like, you know what? No, the stress is getting so much, like I need to say something. And I didn't blow up. I just said, look, I need this. Like I need this. And Donna was like, okay. And that was it. Took me a year.
Mm-hmm.
So asking for what I need it's still a struggle sometimes. And then when I don't ask for what I need, then I get mad. And it's like, but I put myself in this situation.
Sorry. Yeah. I just got excited. Sorry. or how about this one? They should know what I need.
Ooh, that's right.
Steve gets up and walks away. Oh. Yeah.
Expectations lead to resentment.
Oh,
right?
yes. Premeditated. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And we expect people to know what we want and what our boundaries are, and without telling them.
Yeah.
And if we don't communicate that, then it's on us when they don't know.
Yeah. And for the longest time, like I would say to Don, I know I'm talking about Donna a lot tonight. Maybe I need to do some work there. There's just so many, like, relationships are tough in recovery, and for all of the normies out there, relationships are just hard. So, and I share my experiences of what it's like. But, like I would always say I always still do. I'm like, you have to tell me what you need. You have to tell me what you need. And I spent a year saying she should know what I need inside my own head. So it was just like, it wasn't the booze or the drugs. Like I'm just like,
Well, the booze and the drugs are just symptoms of all the things that are still wrong that we still have to work on, right?
They were my best attempt at a solution at the time.
Yeah.
At the time, yep.
Turns out communication might be a better solution.
Ooh, Julie.
Coming in hot.
Mic drop moment.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's going to lead me into wrapping this up. So, Dan, right away, you said anger is not an emotion. It's a response to an emotion. That kind of set this whole thing off. And you talk about hitting the nail on the head. Using anger to not show weakness. I think we all tried to use it to show some sort of strength so we could, puff out our chest and I'm right and you're wrong, that sort of thing. Anger was the wall. Comes from frustration, losing control, not having boundaries, self-abandon, not being heard, and then really good ways to... We all talked about venting. We all talked about having a safe place to put it. I think we all need a safe place to put this. And that's where the groups in our recovery communities, however we recover, whether it's your spouse, and then communicating our needs and making sure that we communicate what we need or what our partner needs. Because that's, I think, the main part is, if we didn't really communicate any of this and we just had those expectations, it's going to be really hard to have any of those met. So Ryan, Dan, and Dan, thank you guys so much for your time and your thoughts and your stories tonight. It was really, really awesome having you guys on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me as always.
Yep.
You guys were awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys were great. And thank you to our listeners for sharing this space with us today. We hope you learned something useful from this episode, and we invite you to join us next week when we talk about burnout and what we can do to move through it or prevent it.